You're live.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to this July 23rd meeting of the New York State Commission on Ethics and Lobbying in Government. I want to welcome everyone here, call this meeting to order, and turn to our Executive Director, Mr. Sanford Berlin, and ask him to declare that we have a quorum and offer any other instructions we need in order to do this meeting appropriately.
Thank you, Chair Dave. This meeting is being held pursuant to and in accordance with the provisions of the state's open meeting law and section 94 of the executive law. The conference room we're using at the Commission's offices in Albany at 540 Broadway, and the meeting room we're using here at the New York State Conference Center at 25 Beaver Street in Manhattan, are both open to the public during public session. And public session is also being live stream. The link can be found on our website, ethics.ny.gov. Interesting, all right. Musical accompaniment. Usually don't get that. In addition, Commissioner Edwards is attending today's meeting remotely by video conference pursuant to section 103-A of the Public Officers Law and the Commission's procedures for member video conferencing pursuant to that section. And Chair, we do have a quorum of commissioners present in Albany and Manhattan.
Thank you, Mr. Berlin. And now we will have a motion to approve the minutes from the June 26th meeting. Is there such a motion? No. Is there a second?
Second.
So that's Vice Chair Austin and Commissioner Cardozo. Any corrections to the minutes? Hearing none. All those in favor of approving the minutes, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Ayes have it.
I'm gonna abstain from that portion of the meeting, the minutes reflecting the portion of the meeting that I wasn't in attendance, but the portion of the open session I approved them. Can you partially abstain? Oh,
I'll let
Not really.
okay, then I abstain from the whole.
Understood. Thank you. Minutes are approved. So report from staff.
Yes, thank you, Chair Davey. The operations report, the operations update can be found under tab B. As we've been doing for a year now, the report includes, in addition to relevant activity figures for the most recent month, June of 2024, column 1, it also includes comparisons to the prior month, May 2024, column 2, comparable monthly and year-to-date periods in 2023, columns 3 and 5 respectively, and the current year-to-date, which is column 4. And let me call the Commission's attention to the investigations data on page 1 of the report. The Commission received a total of 14 tips, complaints, and referrals, 3 fewer than in May. Commissioners received notice of those in the weekly notifications, and a total of 12 matters were closed, all but one of which were closed matters. The ending, pending, and open investigations numbers were 159 and 46 respectively. And that's a net change of +2. No new investigations were opened in June, but there have been investigations opened in July, and again, commissioners have received notice of those. And the May totals were 156 and 47 respectively for open and pending matters. Brian Weinberg, Director of Investigations and Enforcement, will provide some additional color.
As the numbers indicate, we're continuing to pursue our investigations and issue the day letter.
Thank you. We call Commissioner's attention to page 2. The ethics report, a total of 71 guidance requests were received in June. That's a drop off from 104, the kind of level we've been running for the past few months. Notwithstanding that, the year-to-date figures are still running almost 40% higher than in the comparable period in 2023. And I'll turn to Michael Sand, Director of Ethics.
Yes, there was a significant decrease, but I think it's largely attributable to the end of the financial disclosure season and possibly the beginning of the summer season. And also, I would call this more a return to the mean rather than a decline. I mean, I think this is along the more normal line numbers.
Thank you. Now, page 3, lobbying statistics, modest monthly increase in number of lobbyists, 22 registering, and clients 44 in June over May. So the total number of registered lobbyists in the current biennial period is 8,628. And lobbyists total 4,320. June was not a bi-monthly filing period, so we didn't see the kind of surge that you see every other month in the statistics. But there were a number of amendments filed, both to the bi-monthlies and to the semi-annual during this period. And I will turn to Carol Quinn, Director of Lobbying. Carol? Carol?
Director Quinn.
Can you hear us?
Hi. Hi, now you can hear me. Sorry, I was on mute. Right, so this is an off month. No filings were due this month, as Executive Director Berlin mentioned. The only thing I can add, just for purposes of understanding what the amendments might be, since bi-monthly reports were due in May. We see in June, I think, over 1,200 bi-monthly amendments. Those are mostly amendments. Some might be late bi-monthly reports, but mostly amendments. And typically, just to let you know what those are normally about, they might be amending their filed report to add a lobbying activity. They might be fixing a discrepancy. They might be making whatever activity they described in their original report more descriptive. And they might be adding or removing an individual lobbyist, depending on what actually occurred or what. And those are the type of typical amendments. All of these numbers are very typical for an off month. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Carol. Next, page 4, financial disclosure statement. May 15th was the deadline for non-academic filers to file their financial disclosure statements. And through the end of June, over 26,000 filers did in fact make their filings. And another 1,826 outstanding. However, note that over 4,020 failure to file notices were issued following the May 15th deadline. And I will turn this over to Melinda Funk, our Deputy Director for Financial Disclosure Statements, to explain where we are now.
Good morning, Commissioners. As of this morning, we have resolved 2,741 failure to files that were issued on June 13th, and we just have just over 1,200 left. Staff is continuing outreach this week and next week to the remaining individuals that have not filed. And those who do not comply, I will begin issuing notices of delinquency in August. Staff has been working on outreach since July 1st. So we'll be moving forward next month with the next step of enforcement. And on Thursday, I will be issuing my next round of fail to files to those who missed their 30-day deadline to file. And I'm around 160 notices that will be issued.
Linda, thank you. I mean, I should add that the failure to file notices are the first step in the delinquency process. And Linda and her group made concerted efforts to get filers to file in time before we end up at the delinquency end. And later in the agenda, Linda will talk about the agency statistics for filing and not filing, agency by agency. Thank you. Next, training on page 5. As before, we're continuing to report separately the numbers for employees completing live comprehensive ethics training through their agency ethics officers, through our live trainings, that is colleague-led trainings, as well as through the on-demand comprehensive course that has been available since last November. As you can see, we're continuing to conduct a good deal of courses, and the agencies are moving along as well. We do have a little bit of a lag in reporting. When we introduced the phase 2 comprehensive management system for training in mid-June, we temporarily suspended the online agency aggregate statistic reporting module. That had to be rebuilt into the system. That was something that was planned. We're handling that separately. That's only recently gone back up. So we do have a lag. And in fact, the numbers are substantially better than you're seeing in the report on page 5. The year-to-date cumulative number is now, and we still have over 100, and Marlena Diaz will explain in greater detail where we are in that process. But there are quite a few agencies that still have to get their data in. But based on the reports we have to date, over 80,000 individuals in the executive branch have completed either the on-demand course or the live course this year, since January. And that essentially means we're pretty much on target for reaching our goal of having every member of the executive branch, state government, complete at least one course, whether the on-demand or the live training this year in 2024, with a further goal of having everyone having completed the full cycle of a live training and an on-demand training by the end of 2025. So the number in the next to the last row under year-to-date is 80,109 rather than the 69,733 that you're seeing. And the combined figure is 10,397 for the monthly count in June. It is a little bit below the average we're looking for, but it's a function of the time of year and the transition of the system. And we expect that number to pick up. But let me turn it over to Elena.
Hi, good morning. As Sandy mentioned, we expect much larger numbers for the next MOR with respect to June. As I pointed out before, training is really a moving target, right? So we do have a significant amount of agencies that are still putting together their June training stats. We're also getting ready to start reporting on our second quarter training stats as well, just to kind of give you an update of the numbers in the system. We generally update our employee information on the 2nd of every month. So we're expecting to do another data refresh on August 2nd, but for today, we have over 256,000 employee records in the system. Out of that figure, we have 88,000 email addresses, and we're consistently getting more and more spreadsheets from agency users who are giving us updated email addresses as well. So we expect that number to go up. In addition to that, we have over 55,000 employee records with a training completion date in them. So right now, you know, all of the agencies are submitting monthly statistics to us in addition to also updating their individual employee records within the system. So it's a massive undertaking. It's a big push. To kind of help out our agency users, we hosted an ethics forum on July 11th. We had nearly 200 agency users comprising of ethics officers, training compliance officers, agency contacts attend. It was incredibly well received. We received a lot of great feedback. We're in the process of putting together more guidance based off of all of the questions that we received. The training team is doing a huge push with regards to not only updating training records, but also consistently doing agency-specific training. So as of last week, by themselves, they've trained over 1,400 individuals from a specific SUNY campus or on target with training almost 5,000 individuals from a single SUNY campus. So right now we're focusing on a lot of those academics who have more time in the summer to be able to take live training with us. So that's really the big push that we're doing right now. So we're incredibly busy. The team is still doing data cleanup. Ourselves, you know, with just one or two folks from the team, they've updated nearly 2,000 training records for folks who have taken training with us. So, you know, we're incredibly busy here at the training unit.
Elena, thank you.
If we have to do a snapshot today and answer the question, how many trainings of those required to do the training have been done at this point? If today was the day or yesterday, what's that number?
Just on the reported figures, and Marlena probably has better detail than I do right now. About 250,000 individuals in the executive branch have taken at least one training. There may be some duplication, there may be some in the reports we're getting who've taken 2 courses. Their ethics officers are particularly diligent. But by my count, it's somewhere around 250,000. It may be 240, it may be 260 as the numbers come in. And that's out of 320,000 perhaps employees. That's a moving target too, the total number of employees in the executive branch. So it's a very high percentage who had that one course. And that's why I'm confident guardedly that we're going to hit the target by the end of the year of getting everybody having at least one course. And next year is going to be, a heavy lift in making sure that everyone has that second course before the end of what we'll call the biennial period for ethics training.
Marlena, did you have anything additional?
No.
Great, all right, thank you.
All right, thank you. And I should say that Marlena's title is Deputy Director of Learning, Innovation, and Administration, and she's doing a phenomenal job.
Thank you.
Finally, but not least, on page 7, Public Information Office. I'm sorry, I skipped audit and review on page 6. I would call this the normal pattern of random, cyclical pattern of random audits, targeted FDS reviews that the group conducts. There were 58 targeted FDS reviews completed in June compared with 100 in May. 31 random lobbying filing audits were completed. The group is still focused on getting their new software up and running properly. That's consuming a lot of their time. Let me turn it over to Gareth Aaron, our Deputy Director. Gareth?
Yes, morning, everyone. As you just said, we've been in this implementation process for the new teammate software here for the last couple of months. That has definitely taken a lot of time. And also, especially with the targeted review, we go through different cycles as we go through different phases of folks that we do reviews on. So in the most recent phase here, we're now doing the legislator, so members and their staff. And so for those folks, those reviews usually take a little bit more time because we have to go through the LEC. We have to go through the LEC when we have issues and when we have letters and when we have questions and clarification that we need from members or their staff. So those sort of reviews are a little bit more time consuming, or they can be a little bit more time consuming because there's a middleman there. We're not issuing letters directly to members or their staff. So LEC reviews, we call them LEC reviews of legislative members and staff usually take a little bit more time. But the LEC has been cordial. They've worked with us to give us the information we need. They pass the information on to the folks that we need information passed on to. But in general, those usually take a little bit more time. And so currently, after June, after the election, we sort of pivoted from LEC staff members and staff for a little bit to focus on candidate reviews, which is something we've done over the years after an election and then before the general election. Candidates who have sent in their candidate form, financial disclosure form, we go through and we do a targeted reviews and those forms, and we issue letters to those folks, and those also takes a little bit more time because those folks don't have New York State agency emails, so we have to go through standard mail. So we have to actually, go old school, really, print letters up, print envelopes up, and send those out to folks, and then send it to their mailing address that's on file, and they might send us response back, and that's going to take a little bit more time, but that's the process we're going through right now. So right now we're in the middle of doing candidate reviews. And then in terms of the lobbying portion, the lobbying audits, that's the process that's been affected mostly implementation of the teammate software, because we use the teammate software for our lobbying audits. And that's what we use exclusively. And so that's certainly impacted our numbers. Right now, we sort of in a pause on that while we're doing the implementation process, and we're hopefully getting back to our regular scheduled program for the month of July, in August, and the next coming months until we jump back into it again. Our numbers are trending up, or will be trending up. So we just received a new draw here, a new sample from the outside vendor here in June. So we issued those letters, what we call the audit initiation letters, and we're just waiting for documentation to come back to us from these auditees. And once we get this documentation in, we could start completing some of these audits. So that's where you kind of see the dip in numbers too, because we're waiting for source documentation to get back to us from the letters that we've sent out. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Gareth. Questions?
Commissioner James?
Is there a percentage goal for the random audits, percentage of all the?
It works out to a percentage in terms of the random audits. Gareth, correct me, but it's about 800 a year that
Yeah.
we're doing.
Right. Yeah, right now we're trending at about 800, and we're looking to get up to 1,000. Once we're fully staffed. We're not fully staffed yet. We've just went through interviews, and we're hoping to get another compliance auditor hired. But once we're fully staffed, we're looking to get to 1,000 minimum. Once we're fully staffed, 1,000 going forward.
But it runs at 200 a quarter. Essentially, it's how the draw is.
200 a quarter is what we've been drawing in the most recent years. And once we're, like I said, once we're fully staffed, we could bump that number up each quarter.
Vice Chair Austin?
How do you determine which reports you're going to be randomly auditing? Excuse me.
Well, Commissioner, so the process is completely random. So we have an outside vendor that we work with. And so the ITS, New York State ITS, have developed a tool for us where we were able to send the population over. So the total population of filers for a number of years is usually 3 years back. And so we send the whole population of filings to the outside vendor, and we tell them how many to randomly select. And so they have their process that they use to select the random sample. But so we usually have a scope that we stay within a certain number of years, and then everything else is completely random.
Thank you.
And that's a draw. Annually, the group is receiving about 60,000 filings, including amendments. So it's the annual quantity is quite substantial. And the audits focus on particular filings as opposed to individual filings.
Right.
And then I should add that we do have an accounting firm audit the integrity of the random process every year to ensure that it is being done according to the protocol that's required.
Any questions or comments? All right, thank you.
Now, page 7. And again, not least, Public Information Office, number of FOIL requests is down somewhat, June against May, and the number of responses. However, the quantity of the responses, in terms of numerical numbers of pages provided, doubled in the period. So the group has been quite busy, and I will turn it over to Emily DeSantis, our Director of Communications and Public Affairs and our Public Information Officer. More detail. Emily?
Hello. Yeah, we're starting to see our FDS requests taper off after the May 15th filing, but that's what accounted for the increase in the number of pages because those are usually 15 to 20 pages long. The other update I have is it seems that most commissioners for the public hearing are available on November 13th from 1 to 4. There's just 2 outliers that I need to confirm that they are available. So I will follow up with an email, but once we can confirm that those two commissioners are available, we'll be able to lock in the date and start getting a location for that in New York City.
Commissioner Cardozo.
Have the number of FOIL requests that we've had respond to decrease as a result of putting more minutes online?
I'm sorry, you're breaking up. New York, we couldn't hear you. Could you just say that again, Commissioner Cardoza?
Have the number of FOIL requests that we have received declined as a result of more of the information being online and not needing to file a FOIL request?
So we're about steady, about like maybe just a little bit down from where we were last year, but we had had quite a few now people ask for like the section 166 forms and access to that. So those are not reflected on here. So we would be above where we were last year if those were not just, oh, here you go. So.
Thank you.
Questions, comments? All right, thank you.
All right, thank you. Let me introduce the subject of staffing. We have been recruiting. We now have an offer out for Deputy Director of Administration. Fingers crossed on that. Just waiting to have confirmation. As Gareth said, he's been interviewing, we've been interviewing to add another compliance auditor to his group. Some very promising candidates have come through. We're also recruiting for a compliance analyst, same group, but on the financial disclosure side to beef up that group. We're also recruiting actively now for 2 training assistants to help with the administration in the training unit and to help in collecting the figures in populating the system. So that's moving ahead in accordance with the revisions to the expanded staffing plan that the Commission approved at the June meeting. I should mention that we were impacted by the system outage that occurred worldwide last week. For the most part, our applications, our online applications were working. We did have some temporary suspension in the lobbying application. The PSQ, the search function, continued to work, but there was some downtime. We put a placard up on the website on the lobbying application. Quite a few of our workstations were affected, and still affected yesterday. ITS was working through the weekend. They came to our offices in Albany yesterday, and all of those workstations should now be up and running. Martha worked here in New York with ITS on the 3 workstations that we had down, and now I think we only have 1 left that's still blue screening on us or going into some kind of error mode, but everything else appears to be back up and running. So lost a little bit of time and productivity, but we seem to be past that now.
Good.
Was there any questions?
Commissioner Edwards?
No. No question.
Tab C, current year budget update. We're essentially where we anticipated we would be at this point in the budgetary cycle. We expect, as we recruit through the year for our monthly running costs to increase, we will be okay through the end of this year. We'll have projected surplus, we'll see. And that really will depend on how quickly we're able to fill the positions or not. But as I previously said, we're going to need party infusion next year. Once we get, and you can see that in the projected figures, which are on the second page of the budget. With projected running costs in the 4th quarter, if we're at full complement, at the full 67 or 68% that we want to fill, our quarterly costs are going to be over $2 million. So close to the just over $8 million in appropriation, but $7.7 million in cash that we have. So we'll be short.
Commissioner Austin? Vice Chair Austin.
At some point, we will be having new members of the commission. Does this take that into account, or that's a separate line because that's statutory?
No, the per diems are in the budget. And we have a projection that frankly assumes full complement. But we have a little bit of a cushion there because we have not been running yet.
Yeah, so you mentioned that the total sort of projected expense is over $8 million. Is that correct?
Beginning in the next fiscal
In the next
year.
fiscal
Well, or, beginning in the fourth quarter of this year, if we complete our staffing plan at the start of the fourth quarter,
Right.
then we would be running somewhere in excess of $2 million a quarter. So it's close. Other expenses are going up too. We did get an increase in the NPS side, non-personal.
But our actual
expense side.
appropriation is over 8 million, but given the way the state does its budgeting, our allocated cash is 7.7.
Correct. Our appropriation is 8,066,000.
Okay. And I still don't understand that, but we won't waste any time trying to help me understand that, so.
And I will say that we're planning to begin meeting with the budget people shortly in anticipation of our next budget request, so we can stay on top of that. The per diems are now posted, the paid per diems, so I won't read them into the record. They're on the tab D or on the website. Total is $41,730.03, and that reflects preparation hours for some commissioners for January, February, and March, and the April and May commission meetings. And then let me just do a quick update on the Section 94 1B comprehensive review where we stand. We are in the process of scheduling the masterclass that Michael Sander, Director of Ethics, and Carol Quinter, Director of Lobbying, will be leading, going through the seminal important advisory opinions that are currently extant and active and in effect. That's one prong of the process. We're still hoping to be able to do that in July. We'd like to do that in one session if we can. But if we can't find a date that works for everyone, we'll push it to September. There'll be some logic to that as we haven't been pushed on. Expect by that time, but we'll keep pressing on that. On the other side, the survey, we're still planning to get that survey out. We have further to discussion we had at the last commission meeting. Emily and I have met with some outside vendors, presented the questions to them. We've now retained one of them to move forward with reviewing the survey questions, to ensure that they're properly phrased, sequenced. They'll do the follow-up and the analysis. They'll deal with the anonymization of it. The survey will be propounded by the agency, coming from us. But we'll have a system so that if responders are concerned about our knowing who they are, we'll have a process for protecting their anonymity in it. And the outside entity will compile the results for us. Question had been raised about whether there's a need for triangulation. They don't think so, given the nature of the survey that we're conducting. And Emily, is there more that we should, that we need to address? Yep.
No, just that, we're just waiting for the contract to be approved by OGS, I believe, and then we'll be able to get started.
So we're looking forward to getting started with that process. So it's holding up the survey a little bit because we had to go through the procurement process. There.
Right. Questions, comments? Anyone? Ready. Anything else, Sandy?
No, I think we have it covered. We needed to cover here.
So we were going to do, and we will, do a public discussion of a number of continued agenda items, but a number of commissioners have asked for briefing on a matter that needs to be done in executive session. And then we'll come back to public session to get at those agenda items that we need to review. So given that this request has been made for this review of a matter that should be discussed in executive session, Chair will entertain a motion to enter into executive session pursuant to Public Officers Law, Section 105, Executive Law, Section 94, subsection 11, to address matters concerning employment of personnel, pending litigation, and investigative and enforcement matter that is confidential pursuant to Section 94 of the Executive Law. Is there such a motion? Commissioner Vice Chair Austin, is there a second? Commissioner James. All those in favor of the motion say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. We are then moving into executive session.
You are live.
All right, thank you. We are back in public session. We'll have a fuller report out from the executive committee, the executive session later on. But before we adjourn, since we have to go back into executive session one more time before the end of this meeting. What we want to do now in public session is to have a review of one of the continued items of discussion, and that is a resolution prepared for the commissioners, actually drafted by Commissioner Ayers, but shared with the commissioners several days ago, on how we think about governance and committees, et cetera, for this group. So I'm going to turn the floor over to Commissioner Ayers and ask her to walk us through the resolution that we have before us.
Okay, thanks. So a couple of things to say. First of all, I apologize because I broke my own standing request and didn't put a cover memo on this that would have explained what it was, and that's 100% on me. So this is a draft resolution. I'm not proposing it for a vote at this meeting. I wanted to introduce it, give people a chance to think about it, and then if indeed it reflects what the group prefers, we can vote on it at a future meeting. So we held a meeting of the administration committee, which I chair some time ago, to discuss the internal governance structure of the commission, and in particular, the use of things like committees and working groups and alternative models for getting work done within this group. This draft resolution does not resolve some of the disagreements that were expressed at that meeting. Rather, it is intended to identify what I think may be the common overlap between the different views that I held to express. So it certainly will not resolve conversations that we've had, but it's intended to reflect, again, to my best ability, what I think is the common ground that I heard in that conversation. It would replace the current resolution that we're operating under, which is resolution 2022-4, and that's on the website. I'm certainly happy to circulate it again after this meeting if that would be useful to folks. That resolution, which was before I and some of my colleagues were on the commission, created 6 standing committees and provided for them at their option to create subcommittees. It also charged those groups with various responsibilities. That structure is, in my view, not really what we're operating under anymore. Many of those committees meet infrequently, if at all. And we have used other vehicles for getting work done as an alternative, in some people's view, more successfully. That is, in addition to standing committees and subcommittees, we've used ad hoc groups, working groups, and some other tools. So what I tried to draft was a resolution that reflects our current practice, in that it describes essentially a menu of options for how we delegate work within this body. And so the operative paragraphs 1 through 7. Paragraph 1 is a summary that says essentially the choices are: we can create a standing committee, we can create an ad hoc committee or a working group. Those are the same thing. I'm sorry. Yes, this is tab E, as in Edward. We can create, in other words, we can create a standing committee or working group. We can also simply ask an individual commissioner to serve as the point person or the liaison for a given task. In other words, somebody can just volunteer to draft a proposal and bring it to the whole group. We can also schedule an advisory meeting where, and it would probably be Sandy says, there's something that commissioners need to be informed of, so we're just gonna all, let's jump on a Zoom call. Bless you. Alternatively, it also says individual commissioners can just bring proposals directly to the commission without a prior official delegation of work. So if any of us wants to present a proposal, we remain free to do that, as is current understanding, I think. So then the following sections walk through what's involved in each of those. Without going into too much detail, a standing committee has to be ratified by the full commission. So, and that reflects my view that we should only have standing committees when it's the view of the full commission that that's an appropriate thing for us to have. Right now, my sense is we have a difference of view within the commission. And we have 8 different views on what's an appropriate committee. We shouldn't have a standing committee unless it reflects the view of the commission. Ad hoc committees and working groups, by contrast, can be created by the chair. Again, as is, I think, the current understanding and the current practice. The resolution specifies that when the chair does that, the chair notifies the full commission immediately of the tasks assigned to that group, as well as the membership of the group. And that's something that's been raised in the past. Point person is just very simply the chair can ask a commissioner to work with staff on something. Again, I think that reflects current practice. Advisory meetings, again, I think reflecting current practice, the chair or the executive director can schedule a meeting to inform people of developments. And as I said, a proposal by an individual commissioner can be placed on the agenda at the next commission meeting. Vice Chair Austin suggested a clarification, which I think is a good idea. You won't get a vote unless there's a second for it. At Lynn's suggestion, going to clarify that in a future draft. The last section on procedures just has some details that apply to all of these. Some of these were taken directly from the previous resolution. I should say, in case people are worried about my feelings, I don't have strong feelings about really any of this. I'm happy to do whatever the group wants, and I'm very happy to take suggestions. This draft says there will be reports to the full commission from the chair of the committees or working groups. Talks about scheduling and how that works. It incorporates our previous thought that when materials are circulated to a committee, they should be CC'd to the full group. The chair serves as an ex officio voting member. Vice Chair Austin pointed out, I think this was unintentional on my part, the previous resolution makes the vice chair also an ex officio member. I don't remember having any thought about that, so I'm happy to make that the case again. And finally, in 7F, it says one commissioner must keep a list of all pending tasks in front of the commission. That'll obviously be done in collaboration with staff, and I think we've now decided that'll be an addendum to the minutes. Last thing I want to say is none of this addresses the open meetings law requirements for these different kinds of meetings. The intention of the resolution is not to resolve that, but rather to continue to rely on the advice of staff about which meetings need to be made public. So that's why you don't see any mention of open meetings law. Obviously, we would comply with the open meetings law. I think that's all I wanted to say. So again, I'm happy to do this however people want. I'm happy to take comments now or just say, you can send me comments by email and I'll try to work them in for the next meeting. Wanted to give folks time to think about this.
So any just general comments or questions or clarification without necessarily debating the substance?
Can we make clear, since I don't disagree, that what's going to happen tomorrow? If we think tomorrow, before we vote on your resolution, we need to have a group studying something. Should we pass something now that says where necessary, the executive director and or the chair can just do that?
Have some thoughts on that, but go ahead.
Yeah, so as long as we haven't voted to adopt this new resolution, we're still under the old resolution. And so my sense would be that just as the chair has been creating ad hoc groups, the chair is able to continue doing that.
You don't want to be slowed down till.
Yeah.
This provides for the repeal of the earlier one in favor
We
of
get
this,
there.
but there's nothing repealed yet.
Yeah,
Right, and the day after we passed this resolution, there would be no more standing committees, to be clear. That would require a full vote. But that's not true of working groups, which can be reestablished by the chair. It would abolish all existing sub-bodies within this group. The chair could immediately create more.
Any other questions for clarifications? Okay, we will, a motion to table and revisit at the September meeting with the intent, I think, to act on it. So we should be clear about that, and that should be, so that's the motion.
Some of it.
Vice Chair Austin, is there a second? Commissioner Becker. Any more discussion?
I
Right?
think Commissioner Edwards had said.
No, I think she was just seconding, yeah. So motion to table, as I understand it, is not one that can be debated. We have raised up or down. So all those in favor of tabling with the intent to act on it at the September, this resolution at the September meeting, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? No, the ayes have it. Motion's carried. We are now going to break for a lunch and go back into executive session, where we'll consider a number of things on the executive session agenda. But before we do that,
If I may, can we request counsel just to opine as to the applicability of the open meetings law?
when we discuss it in September, absolutely. So let that be reflected on the minutes that Vice Chair Austin has asked our general counsel to opine on the applicability, that's the word, of the open meetings law to this particular resolution.
Wait, I'm sorry. To our discussion of the resolution?
To the resolution.
Yeah, so.
Thought it's created.
Provisions of.
Right.
To the provisions of, okay, got it, thank you.
All right, is that clear? All right, so why don't we just adjourn to executive session? Thank you. We shut down the public session prematurely prior to officially and formally entering into executive session. So Chair will entertain a motion to enter into executive session pursuant to Public Officers Law, Section 105 and Executive Law, Section 94, subsection 11, to address matters concerning employment of personnel, pending litigation, and investigative and enforcement matter that is confidential pursuant to Section 94 of executive law. Is there such a motion? Commissioner Caraballo, is there a second? Commissioner James, all those in favor of entering into executive session, please say aye. Opposed, no. Ayes have it. We're now in executive session. All right, welcome back to the public session of this July 23rd meeting of the Commission on Ethics and Lobbying in Government in the state of New York. So I will turn the floor over to our Executive Director, Mr. Sanford Berlin. Give us a readout from the executive session.
Thank you, Chair Davey. In executive session, the commission discussed matters related to litigation and legal advice. The commission discussed personnel matters. The commission granted a request pursuant to executive law.
When they get close. Thanks. Bye.
Let me just repeat that. The commission granted a request pursuant to executive law section 9411B. The commission approved 2 executive law section 9410F reports. The commission closed 11 matters and discussed several other investigative matters. And the commission discussed an application for an exemption from the post-employment restrictions pursuant to Public Officers Law, section 73 sub 8-B. That covers it.
And we have action to take on the last.
If I
Yeah,
may,
yes, on the 8-B.
we didn't do the 8-B. We discussed it, but we didn't vote on it.
Yeah, no, that's
Correct.
exactly what we just said.
We discussed it and now in public session, item 7, relevant 7. We have the application for 73 8-B approval for a vote.
All right, motion to approve the recommendation. Seconded by Commissioner Cardozo. A motion made by Vice Chair Austin. Any more discussion on this? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. All right. Financial disclosure statements.
Thank you. Yes, attachment G, as I mentioned in the meeting, is a list by agency, failure to file notices that were issued. This accounts for the 4,020 failure to file notices that were issued to those who were required to but did not file with financial disclosure statements that were due May 15th. And unless there are any questions?
Who stands out?
Well, I was about to ask, because the MTA jumps out at you at 376.
And the transit authority.
And given all the other publicity surrounding the MTA relating to congestion pricing, I just wonder if something follows from that, or is that just typical that there's such a failure to file by MTA?
Well, I'll turn it over to Melinda Funk, our Deputy Director of Financial Disclosure Statements. As Melinda said, there's a good deal of follow-up that takes place after those notices go out, and many of them have been cured. Do we have Melinda? We
I don't believe Melinda's on.
Well, I think we should highlight MTA and there are a number of others.
I know that the MTA is a very large agency.
Right.
What's the percentage?
50,000 employees.
Right.
No,
Like it's small.
Right, but the amount of FDS filers is also an extremely high number of FDS filers at the MTA,
So it's
so.
like 5%.
While 376 seems like a high number, it's they probably have, they don't have the numbers in front of me, but I would think that they're in the tens of thousands of filers, so 376 is altogether not terrible.
It'd be helpful if we had a percentage that these numbers represent of the total population in the various departments.
Yeah, let's do this for the next commission meeting, for the September meeting.
Right.
We'll provide the agency total, so you can see the number. And as Kavita said, MTA is quite a large agency, thousands, but quite a few policymaker threshold filers in the MTA.
And with
Really,
the,
Stony Brook is pretty high.
With the
These are large entities.
East
with
Stony
like-
Brook, oh, because they have to match all the other.
Correct.
and with the understanding that the total number of filers is a number that is somewhat of a moving target. We have 4,000 here plus roughly late fail to file notices issued, I guess. Out of what's the pool?
The pool, we had 26,000 plus that were filed through May and June. This is another 4,000 that basically makes up the population of non-academic filers. And then we have another 5,000 to 6,000 academic filers whose filings are due in November. So we're talking about.
We do have Melinda Funk on the line if you want to pose some questions directly to her.
I'm sorry, say that again.
Melinda Funk is on the call.
She's joined the meeting.
If you
Right,
want to
what-
ask her
what I-
specific-
Yeah, Melinda, do you know offhand how many filers there are from MTA?
Not off the top of my head, I don't. I know it's a large number. And they're
What was
usually, I'm sorry,
More
Judge, go
more
ahead.
than 3,000?
Oh, yes. Yes.
So it could be, that's a small number then.
I mean, if you go back to the annual report where I prepared numbers, I gave the total number of filers for last calendar year, which they really haven't changed over the years. They vary, probably by a few hundred at a time, but it's always a large number that makes up all of MTA and the subsidiaries.
It's a large pool, and by my calculation, Melinda, there are roughly 30,000, give or take, non-academic filers whose filings are due in May each year. Is that more or less the correct number?
Yeah, and I believe when I got the report, when we issued the filing notice, I think we were around 27, 28 that went out. But it's always a fluctuating number with agencies constantly adding people, removing people. There's never really an accurate number because it changes on a daily basis.
Right. So for MTA, it's about 10% of the workforce.
Yeah, I would probably say that's about accurate.
Yeah. And is that average?
Yes.
Yeah, it's average. So they're consistent.
They're one of the largest agencies that we handle.
Right, but I'm saying if it's just 10%, they're probably average with all other agencies in terms of people not handing it in on time, right?
Yes.
I do think it's worth noting that there was a recent article indicating that judicial financial disclosures, which are filed with the commission in charge of judicial ethics, noted that there's been virtual non-compliance by judges with the requirement. And they're now moving to change that. I just wonder if you've been in contact with them in any way in that connection.
The only time I'm in contact with the Judicial Ethics Commission is if any of the judges serve on the state boards. And then they just provide us a copy of their receipt that they filed with the Judicial Ethics Commission to satisfy their requirement with our commission. And that's maybe 5 or 6.
Actually, I believe it's OCA that is the filing agency for judicial orders.
But as Melinda's pointing out, we do comply with the annual reporting requirements. We've been timely with tracking that. And for the next commission meeting, we'll add the agency total so you can see the number. And these are just the initial failure to file notices. Very high percentages of these have already been cured.
Yes.
Many more will be by the time of the next meeting. It's really an initial snapshot. The number of, as I said before, the next step, delinquency notices, which is somewhat down the road, we'll see a much smaller at that, so we won't have compliance. No other questions?
All right, okay, then, thank you. Anything under new and other business?
So I had circulated a list, Sandy circulated on my behalf of what I believe to be potential legislative agenda items on which the commission has not taken action. Some of which I think there may be no action needed because nobody is actually advocating that we take any action, and without a motion, we shouldn't act. But in conversations during the break, some of us were talking about plans for how to resolve those agenda items, and the thought, just to share it with everyone, was that as we approach the annual public hearing, it would be helpful to have, Sandy had indicated that staff is going to be sharing results from the surveys that are currently out, so that may give us thoughts about potential legislative agenda items. I asked Sandy if there are staff-generated issues potentially for the legislative agenda, in other words, things that we haven't yet voted on for the legislative agenda, but that staff feels would be helpful to add to it. And so my thought, for whatever it's worth, is it would be best to take those remaining items up at the September meeting, on the understanding that if we don't get through them at the September meeting, we may need to schedule a special commission meeting so that we can go into the public hearing with an already prepared sense of what our legislative agenda items are and solicit the public's feedback on them.
And can we ask commissioners to sort of opine on those items via email between now and the time that we get to the September meeting, so we have some sense of where we are on those things as an appropriate request to make?
Yeah, we'll collect them, so you can direct them to me, and I'll make sure to circulate.
I mean, in that
Are
connection,
we talking?
we're also going to suggest if we have any other additional suggestions that we should perhaps consider, we should submit them to you or Ava.
I think submit them to all of us.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then let us comment on them. Albany?
And we're talking about just the ones included in the memo, but also the ones that were on our agenda for this year, right? Which ones of those we think we should carry forward or not?
They're on the list that Ava prepared that our executive directors circulated.
Well, no, Emily's asking
Well,
about
that's one list. Yeah, that's one list for sure. But remember, we had our 2024 legislative agenda, so we need to consider if we want to carry forward with some of those proposals as well. So we might want to do that in the same exercise.
Yeah,
So we can
yes,
circulate that list again.
Thank you.
yes, the residuals.
Right, and then just to clarify on timing for any additional items, so we have our November public hearing, which will have some proposals that we're gonna get feedback on, and as we've talked about this process, for 6 months now, only the proposals that are like really ripe and everybody's in agreement on will make it onto the 2025 legislative agenda out of that, because remember, as part of the comprehensive review, it might take more time to look at those and discuss and figure out what we want to do, like it was for some of the items last year, so they would be on the following year's legislative agenda. If, coming out of the public hearing, there's things that are new that we haven't seen before, that we haven't discussed, that aren't total agreement.
Would that include issues that did arise this year, but we haven't formally
So
dealt?
those are on Commissioner Ayer's list, I believe.
Yeah, I've been trying to collect, I went back through and looked at all the minutes to try to collect what we've mentioned but haven't dealt with. And I'll coordinate with, if people have ideas for additional suggestions, send them to all of us, and I'll work with Sandy to produce a document. But I also think, Emily, to your point about the last year's legislative agenda, it would be really helpful to know what staff's recommendations are, sort of support, don't support, maybe even prioritize, because there were a couple where Sandy's responses in my memo that I saw were sort of like, we don't have any problem with this, which seems like a different perspective than we want to support this. Right? Sort of like, if you want to do it, fine, we won't stand in your way. That's a little, so it may be helpful to have, if that's a third category, as it sounds like it is, it'd be helpful to.
It's a nuance.
It's a nuance, but we can work to prepare hopefully a single document for commissioners that will have all of these ideas, because things aren't in it.
Sure. And it would be good to indicate, maybe have ones that staff have looked at, staff members have looked at and are supportive of. And then I'm assuming, and then if there's some, and the ones that aren't a priority. So let's see if we can do it that way.
Well, we did also, right, the other category, I guess, would be we can sort of defer this to the comprehensive review, or staff needs more time. You know, all of those seem like reasonable positions.
Yes. So what we get will indicate those levels, the status of those vis-a-vis staff priorities.
Correct.
Okay, good. All right, just point of personal privilege, if I can. As most of the commissioners know, and I think most of the staff, I informed the governor's office in May that September 30th would be my last day as a commissioner on this commission. I'll have more to say about that in September, but I just wanted to announce it now so that when September gets here, it doesn't look abrupt. But it's been under discussion now for a couple of months. I know that it's been public that there is a governor's appointee pending, and hopefully that person will be able to join us in September. I also know that active discussions are underway with some potential candidates for my replacement. And so hopefully there'll be more to say about that in September as well. But I just wanted to officially state it, and I'll have more to say. I will just say briefly here, it's been a privilege, an honor to serve with fellow commissioners and to engage and relate to and collaborate with the sort of stellar staff that this commission has, that we have discussed and talked about before. And I think the commission has done an extraordinary job of essentially starting anew in September of 2020, September of 2022, when some of us started to come aboard here to create a new ethics commission for the state of New York. And in spite of the court cases that have been headwinds in some ways, this commission has continued to do the work on behalf of the people of the state of New York to ensure accountability when it comes to elected officials and state employees. So I want to thank you for this opportunity now, but I have more to say. In September, I simply wanted to make it official that I have sent that information into the governor's office, and that September 30th will be my last day. So thank you.
We're not happy.
And with that, if there's no other business, sure.
That, have we done anything about urging the two minority leaders who each have an appointment to?
Other than my public announcement at the last meeting encouraging everyone who has vacancies to make appointments, I don't know of anything.
No, we have not had any specific outreach. They have taken a position in the Levine litigation, which is sub judice in the Appellate Division 4th Department. So we're not anticipating, it would be wonderful if they were to nominate candidates to the commission. But we have not had separate outreach to them, given the positions they've now taken in the Appellate Division.
One of them did appoint at one point.
Hence the appeal that's sub judice.
The other one did too. Yeah.
Yes, we did. We did.
Oh,
We
that's
have
right.
Judge Garden. But both minority leaders have now taken a position in the 4th Department.
And I'll just say for fear of looking like I forgot, when I raised this at the last meeting, I suggested I might explore drafting a resolution or some sort of formal statement. And a few days later, we got the announcement of another nomination from the governor's office, which is great. And so on the understanding that the remaining 2 vacancies are not just people not nominating, but people actually deciding they don't want to do that because of pending litigation. I'm not pursuing that. I'm not saying nobody else should, just that's why I didn't follow up on that.
All right. There's no other business.
Well, the only other thing, I have much to say, but I will hold my comments until, comments may be the wrong word, until the September meeting. But just to say that it's been a huge honor.
Thank you.
And privilege serving with you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All righty. One more time. There being no other business to come before this body, the chair will entertain a motion to adjourn. So, right, so, Commissioner James and Commissioner Ayers. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, we are adjourned. Thank you. Thanks to the public. Thanks to the staff. Thanks to fellow commissioners. Thanks to everyone who contributes to the work of this commission. We're adjourned.
Thank you.